Previously, I demonstrated how to use FindByName to locate an object, particularly a box view, among 400 box views. I wrote the interface with XAML, and you saw that we created box view code, 400 statements in Excel, and copied it over. When we look at the repetition of those statements, it seems like creating this in C# would be a great move. But in the C#, we used FindByName to locate one of those objects, one of those box views, randomly and change its color. Creating the UI in C#, we won't have access to FindByName because we don't have access to the name extension when we create an object. But we can use StyleId as a unique identifier and then create a custom class to find an object by its StyleId. And that's what we'll do in this project. I recreated the previous FindByName app in Visual Studio using a C# content page to create the user interface rather than the XAML that I did in the previous project. And you can see it running here. Basically it's the same thing. I made a few changes in terms of the text at the top, but really it's the same application with 400 box views randomly changing color. Let's take a look at the code. As I demonstrated in a previous lesson on creating C# UI code, I added a new class of a content page with C#, and I named it C#grid.cs, and that's the page you see here. So since I've already gone through the code of my process of creating C# UI, I'm not going to belabor this, but I do want to just kind of hit the highlights. This isn't much different than the FindByName. We have a random object. I have a list named palette that's of type color, and I'm using an iDispatcher timer. For my constructor here, add the colors to my palette. Then I'm doing the object factory, and I created an LBL title, a subtitle, my grid, and my btn animate. And then I'm setting the background color to a light coral. And here's my content. I'm using a vertical stack layout, set the spacing, the padding, the vertical options, the horizontal options, and the children, in that I am adding a vertical stack layout of my title and subtitle because I wanted to bring those closer together. I didn't want the spacing of the vertical stack layout to keep those further separated. So by putting them in a vertical stack layout, I can bring the letting of those much tighter together. And then I'm adding my grid animated and my btn animate. So the children of that vertical stack layout are the two labels I created above in the object factory. Then I'm going to use a loop, going through 20 rows and 20 columns and creating those 400 box views. And I'm setting the StyleId to BV plus a counter that's going to go from 0 to 399. That'll give me 400 unique StyleIds of those box views. I'm incrementing that counter. I'm selecting color randomly and then randomly changing that box view color to either that color or black. 50% chance of either way. And then I'm going to add to the animated grid that box view in the row and column. And that should actually be in the column and the row. Again, it doesn't make any difference. Rather than going vertically, they're going to go horizontal. The program will still work the exact same. But just to hammer home that when you're adding something to the grid, it should be the column and the row. Then I've got my timer as I did before. Here's where I'm going to set up that box view by StyleId. This is FindByStyleId is not a built-in method. I'm creating a custom method that's going to be similar to the FindByName. And I'll come back to that in a minute. I'm going to jump down here to my button for control animation. I'm setting btn as a button object equal to sender, and I'm going to basically toggle it to pause and resume as we did before. We'll stop our timer. That timer is calling this animate method. And that's the one we want to use, the FindByVoxView StyleId, to randomly pull one of those box views. Now this is going to fire basically 100 times per second. That's the target. In that animate method then, we're going to randomly get a number between 0 and 399. I'm going to call it cell. We're going to get a string of BV and whatever the value of that cell is. And then here's I'm using that FindBoxViewByStyle, passing it BV as a box view. As long as it doesn't come back as null, that didn't find it, we're going to set the color randomly again. We're going to set the color of that target to the new color if it's black, otherwise we'll set it to black. Let's look at that Find Box View by StyleId. Now, the title I have, Find StyleId, but it's really easiest to make this, if you know the type of view you want to find, in this case the box view, makes it the easiest. Now I have it as an object here. I could have made this private box view. It might even be better that way. I'm going to have to convert it from the object to the box, which you actually do here, and the result is being changed as box view. Either way, I'm going to get all the descendants of this application. So I'm using this.getVisualTreeDescendants of type box view. So it's a generic method. I'm passing it a box view. It's going to create a list of all the box views in this application. Now in this case, there's 399 of them, actually 400 of them, from 0 to 399. For each one of those, then I'm going to go through a loop and see if the style ID of that object matches what I passed it. And if it does, I'm going to return the object. If none of them match, I'll return null. That's it in a nutshell. Once again, let me run this. And as you can see, it works just as well using the C# code to create the interface, and then using my custom FindStyleId method. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the .NET MAUI Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.